Time for Focus. Today we have a report from Egypt on Al-Azhar, the world's most prestigious seat of Islamic learning. It's long been regarded as a bastion of moderation, but France 24 reporters spoke to people studying at Al-Azhar who say the university is in fact teaching the same texts used by jihadists to justify their attacks on non-Muslims.
Today, like every day, Mohammed Abdul Fadil is watching over his teams. The young director of the Counter-Terrorism Observatory guides 70 researchers responsible for tracking the communications of jihadi groups. Set up inside Al-Azhar, Sunni Islam's leading institution worldwide, they aim to see everything.
It's an article that says men and women from the Islamic State must marry from within the group.
Yes, and to justify that, they're taking Quranic verses out of their context. We're constantly keeping a close eye on websites that relay Islamic State group propaganda and messages. This monitoring work is on a daily basis. We're dealing with films, newspapers, magazines, etc. Then, we refute the false ideas or incorrect conclusions they advocate, and we transmit all our notes to the Al-Azhar Executive Committee.
Chinese, Pashto, German, Russian, or even Swahili, here researchers work in 12 languages. Their objective? Deconstruct Islamist propaganda to help Al-Azhar's authorities develop a rebuttal. Ibrahim is collecting all he can online in French, but his position is very clear. He does not engage with those who have adopted extremist positions.
These people, they refuse us, they reject us, they don't accept us. For them, we're miscreants. The extremists, the radicals, these are people who have abandoned moderate Islam.
Promoting moderate Islam, that is the goal of this institution. To do so, Al-Azhar uses the same tools as Islamic State group. Videos, magazines and social media. The discourse is aimed at 14 to 25-year-olds, the main demographic targeted by terrorist organizations.
It's a category directly targeted on social media networks, so these are the ones we're trying to reach with our publications, which we try to keep simple, with an accessible religious language and with messages that are short and useful, and broadcast on Facebook and Twitter.
The new strategy has not necessarily registered much success amongst the youth here in Egypt. A student who studied entirely at Al-Azhar institutions explains. For reasons of security, he prefers not to show his face.
Frankly, I've never seen any of this, and I'm quite active on social media. But I can tell you, Al-Azhar is not. The institution's online footprint is very limited, so it doesn't really affect anyone.
This is not the only critique the student has for the schools of Al-Azhar. Despite its declared intention to defend moderate Islam, the institution has in recent weeks been heavily criticized with accusations that it has never revised its own programs. Certain schools within Al-Azhar may even be promoting extremist ideas.
Most of those like me who study at Al-Azhar don't study the curriculum that is officially announced. On the contrary, we have professors who are Salafis, Muslim Brothers, or even Wahhabis, who diffuse their ideology within the university itself. For example, we study the way in which a Muslim should be judged if he kills a Christian. Within Al-Azhar, some people do not consider it a crime.
These cases are rare within the institution. As part of its anti-extremism efforts, Al-Azhar also organizes meetings with local residents, such as here in Alexandria, the country's second city.
We're from the Islamic Research Committee. We came here to see if you have any questions for us.
Alexandria is a bastion of Salafism, an ideology that preaches a strict interpretation of Islam. But Al-Azhar hopes to regain influence here.
Our role is to eradicate terrorism. To do that, we are trying to destroy the causes of extremism. So we intervene on a very local level, changing beliefs and ideas.
This young high school student is worried about the rise of extremism in his country. He expects a lot from the preachers.
It's really important for the preachers to come all the way here to speak with us in our own cafes. You never know. There could be a young person here with no education being lured into extremism and who could perpetrate an attack. Well, if a preacher comes and tells him that's bad, he will listen.
A reflection of Egyptian society that is both liberal and conservative, the Sunni institution of Al-Azhar is itself faced with internal contradictions. Contradictions that could even put the brakes on its own goals of eradicating terrorism.
For more on this, I'm now joined from London by Nirvana Mahmood. She's a doctor and commentator on Middle East issues. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, what's your take on this criticism that Al-Azhar has allowed hardliners to remain in senior positions and failed to reform its curriculums?
Hello?
We seem to be having technical issues. I'll just repeat the question. I hope you can hear me. I was just asking what your take is on this criticism that we hear about in that report, that Al-Azhar has allowed hardliners to remain in senior positions and failed to reform its curriculums.
Unfortunately, I think this criticism is valid. There are some scholars in Al-Azhar who follow semi-radical, hardline teaching of Islam since generation, not just from today. For example, there was a big debate in Egypt, rage after terror attack against Copts, debating whether Copts are infidels or people of the book. And unfortunately, two scholars, both are Al-Azhar graduates, have claimed on open media that Christians are infidels, creating a lot of controversy in Egypt. Yet Al-Azhar have suspended those clerics, but didn't change the curriculum or the teaching which back this kind of belief or interpretation of Islam. I personally wrote a piece about one of those clerics, and I was faced on Facebook by a storm of Egyptians accusing me of blasphemy. This kind of teaching has to be countered, and not just on open official channels in Egypt, but wider in the community. There is a lot of confusion among youth about what Islam, what is the difference between Muslim and Christian and Jews, and what is the difference between that and atheism. There is also a lot of tension and hatred in the society which have to be countered.
Just to talk a little bit more about this institution, Al-Azhar, what kind of relationship does it have with the authorities, particularly the president?
Al-Azhar have backed the July 3rd ousting of Morsi in Egypt, and is clearly supporting President Sisi. It also have on many occasions interfered on political decision. Like yesterday, they backed the cutting of relationship with Qatar, which is not a religious decision, rightly or wrongly, about the politics with Qatar. But in my opinion, Al-Azhar should not interfere in such cases. And that is what polarized the situation in Egypt, that you found clerics who support political decision and other clerics who oppose political decision, and that confused the public.
And do you think that this debate in Egypt over the teachings of Al-Azhar has wider implications, wider ramifications in the region as a whole?
I do believe that, because there are, opposite to Al-Azhar, there are clerics like Sheikh Qaradawi who are based in Qatar and is clearly loyal to the Qatari royal family and the Emir of Qatar. And he is preaching completely different things. One of the things I'm worried about is the Egyptian expats. If the Qatar crisis have led to an exodus of expats coming from Qatar back to their native country, Egypt, those people have had or followed religious
outlook, which is completely different than what is Al-Azhar teach now. There is a lot of various things in the region which influence people's religious belief. And in a society which take religion from talk shows and cassette and social media, there is a lot of things had to be corrected, not just an official declaration from Al-Azhar or official statement.
What should we read into the fact that a Christian student was recently granted admission to the university, and of course the Pope was there recently?
Yes, all of these are positive steps in the right direction. We want not just one Christian student to be admitted. We want more than one, to be many Copts or even Shiite Muslim or even atheists. Anybody should join a university to learn stuff they want to learn, regardless of their religious affiliation. The Pope visit was warmly welcomed in Egypt, and it was definitely a step in in building bridges with other religious community in the world. Nonetheless, I still feel that the main problem is the youth in the streets who are not necessarily listening to Al-Azhar. You have to remember that Salafi students or youth in general do not watch mainstream media. They are relying on things which is sometimes backward and medieval, like text, like apps on the iPhone to communicate with each other. And they don't listen to what Al-Azhar teach.
So you need to be on social media to really reach people then and counter the influence of extremists.
But Al-Azhar will have more credibility if it detaches itself from politics, because then they will look as neutral and reliable and trustable.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time and your analysis. Thank you very much indeed, Narvana Mahmoud, for joining us for today's Focus.